They say you should never judge a book by its cover. But what happens when the man holding the law is the one being tested by life itself? It was a cold Tuesday morning, the kind that wrapped the streets in a gray silence, broken only by the shuffle of hurried footsteps and distant car horns. Most people had their heads down, collars up, rushing toward somewhere warm, somewhere safe. But in the corner of a near-empty street, something unexpected was unfolding. A black police officer, Officer Malik Johnson, stepped out of his patrol car. He was built strong, with years of service behind those shoulders. His face? Calm, trained, but there was a storm brewing in his eyes. Across the street, curled up near a shut-down diner, was a homeless man. Scruffy beard, layers of old clothes, a weather-beaten face that had forgotten what a soft pillow felt like. His name? No one really knew, but people whispered and passed by like he didn't exist. Malik walked toward him, slowly, purposefully, and in that moment, a small crowd began to form. Phones out, recording, waiting for something explosive. Because that's what people expect now, don't they? Black cop, homeless man. This couldn't possibly end well, right? Sir, Malik's voice was steady. You can't be here. The homeless man didn't move, didn't even look up. Maybe he'd heard those words too many times to care anymore. Maybe he thought this was it. Another moment of being swept away, thrown aside like garbage. Sir, Malik said again, now kneeling. I need you to stand up. Suddenly, tension, phones recording, murmurs rippling through the crowd. And then the man looked up. His eyes were glassy, empty, but there was something deeper behind them. A wound, a story no one had ever asked about. And still, he said nothing. Officer Malik gently reached for the man's arm. And just like that, the words spilled out. You don't have to arrest me, the man whispered, his voice dry. I'll leave. I got nowhere to go anyway. Malik paused. He had arrested hundreds before. He had seen crime, danger, even hate. But what he saw in this man, it wasn't rebellion. It wasn't disrespect. It was surrender. He could have cuffed him then, put him in the back of the squad car and driven off. Case closed. But something inside Malik wouldn't let him move. Because deep down, he saw something hauntingly familiar. Flashback. Malik's own childhood wasn't all sirens and stability. Raised by a single mother in the South Side, there were nights they didn't eat, days they didn't have power. And more than once, Malik remembered sleeping in a car, curled up with his little sister in the back seat, pretending it was an adventure. He knew what hopelessness smelled like. He had wore it once. And now, that scent was back. Malik stood up, took a breath, and did something no one expected. He radioed in. Dispatch, I need assistance at 45th and Willow. No, not backup. I need social services. And a medical unit. A beat of silence. Wait, a woman from the crowd said. You're not arresting him? Malik turned to her. No, ma'am. I'm helping him. People blinked. Murmurs turned to silence. For once, the cameras stopped recording. Not because there was no drama, but because no one saw this coming. He looked back at the man, still sitting, still broken. What's your name? Malik asked. James, the man whispered. Well, James, let's get you cleaned up. Warmed up. Let's get you somewhere safe tonight. James looked away, then back at Malik. His lips trembled, not from the cold, but from something deeper. Recognition. Relief. Tears welled in his eyes. No one said that to me in years, he said. No one's even asked my name. There was a pause, the kind that stretches time. Officer Malik didn't say anything right away. He just stood there, hand on James's shoulder, grounding him. Human to human. A rustle behind them. An older man from the crowd slowly stepped forward and said, I've seen him out here for months. He never causes trouble. Just sits there. Malik nodded. Then maybe it's time someone stood up for him. James sniffled, wiping his face with his sleeve, embarrassed by the emotion but unable to hide it. Malik helped him up slowly. James stumbled, his legs weak, joints stiff from too many nights on the concrete. Take your time, Malik said. You're safe now. The crowd was silent, watching. One teenager whispered to his friend, Yo, this is different. And it was. Moments later, the medical van arrived, along with a city outreach worker named Maria. She was in her late 40s, the kind of woman whose voice carried warmth and command all at once. "Officer Johnson?" she asked. Malik waved her over. "This is James. He needs somewhere to stay, and maybe someone to talk to." Maria squatted next to James and offered him a water bottle. "Hi, James. You okay if we help you out today?" James hesitated, looking back and forth between Malik and Maria. Finally, he gave a small nod. As Maria and the medical team began checking James' vitals, Malik took a step back and watched. For the first time that day, he let himself breathe. But he also knew this wasn't just about James. This was about all the people like him, unseen, unheard, unwanted. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. His mind replayed James' face over and over. He thought about how easy it would have been to arrest him, label him as another vagrant, and move on. But something inside told him that if he'd done that, he would have been part of the problem. So instead, he pulled out an old leather-bound notebook, one his mother had given him when he graduated from the academy, and he wrote just 2 words: "See people." The next morning, Malik showed up at the shelter where James had been taken. Not in uniform, just jeans, hoodie, and a tired heart full of questions. Maria greeted him at the door. "He's still resting," she said, "but I think he's ready to talk." Inside the small common room, James sat in a chair, sipping coffee. His hair was cleaner, face shaved. His eyes still held the weight of years, but today they also held light. "You came back," James said softly. "I said I would," Malik replied, pulling up a chair. "Wanted to check in, maybe learn more about you." James looked down. "Not much to tell." Malik smiled faintly. "Try me." And so, James began. He talked about his youth, how he once dreamed of being a carpenter, how his mom passed when he was just 17, and how his life derailed after that. Drugs, bad decisions, wrong friends. One mistake led to another until everything he loved was gone. "I tried to bounce back a few times," James admitted. "Got a job once at a hardware store. Even rented a room. But then I got laid off, couldn't pay rent, and just gave up." Malik listened, really listened. Not with the ears of a cop, but with the heart of a man who understood loss. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," Malik finally said. "But I also know one moment can turn things around." James looked at him. "You think this is that moment?" "I think it could be." And it was. Because over the next few weeks, Malik checked in on James regularly. He helped him get an ID, filled out job applications with him, even got a few of his friends in city departments to pull some strings. James began doing odd jobs at the shelter, cleaning, fixing things, slowly building back his dignity. One day, Malik brought him a gift, a wooden toolbox, brand new. James stared at it, stunned. "For me?" Malik grinned. "For the carpenter in you." James opened the box slowly, running his fingers over the tools like they were sacred. His hands trembled. "No one's believed in me like this," he whispered. Malik shrugged. "Maybe it's time someone did." What no one knew then was that someone had recorded the original interaction between Malik and James, but not just the confrontation. They captured the entire act of kindness. It was uploaded anonymously to the internet with the title, "The Day a Cop Chose Compassion Over Cuffs." Within hours, it went viral. Comments flooded in. People were stunned, touched, moved. "We need more officers like this." Restored my faith in humanity. That man's life was saved that day, not by force, but by love. News stations picked it up. Malik was invited on talk shows. He declined most of them. "I didn't do it for attention," he said. "I did it because it was right." The world knew Malik Johnson now, not as a cop who made an arrest, but as a man who rewrote what justice looked like in real time. Still, Malik kept showing up like always. No podiums, no medals, just a quiet visit to the shelter every few days, checking in on James, sometimes bringing donuts, other times just silence and presence. And James? He was no longer just the homeless guy. He had a name now. He had purpose. And little by little, he had hope. One bright Saturday morning, James arrived early at a local community center. Malik had helped him apply for a part-time maintenance job there, and now it was his first day. Toolbox in hand, shirt tucked in, chin held high, James stood at the front steps, waiting to be let in. The director of the center, a kind woman named Evelyn, unlocked the doors and smiled warmly. "You're early," she said. "I've waited a long time for this day," James replied. "I wasn't about to be late." As he stepped through the door, something strange happened. A little boy, maybe 5 or 6, stopped in the hallway and looked up at him. "Hey," the boy said, "aren't you the guy from the video?" James blinked. "What video?" "The nice cop saved you," the boy said. "My mom showed it to me. She said people can change." James didn't know what to say. He smiled, touched the boy's shoulder gently, and kept walking. But the moment lingered. He hadn't realized how far that video had gone, or how it had reached not just adults, but young hearts too. That evening, back at the shelter, James sat down with a notebook. It was something Maria had given him earlier that week. "Write down your story," she had encouraged. "Not just for you, but for the next person who thinks they're too far gone." At first, James didn't know what to write. But eventually, he scribbled a title across the top of the page. "The Day Someone Saw Me." Meanwhile, across town, Malik was sitting in his patrol car, parked under a tree near the edge of the neighborhood. He had just responded to a domestic call, a tough one, and needed a breather. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Maria. You should see what James wrote. Attached was a photo, a page filled with words, raw and heartfelt, talking about how one moment changed his life. How being treated like a human being instead of a problem had pulled him from the edge. Malik stared at it for a long time. Then he picked up the phone and made a call to a reporter who had reached out to him weeks ago, one he had previously ignored. "Hey," he said, "I think it's time to talk." 2 weeks later, the segment aired. But it wasn't just about Malik. It was about James. The reporter, Laura Simmons, sat with both of them for the interview. She asked James what had changed. He looked into the camera and said, "I was ready to disappear. But this man here, he saw me. He didn't see a homeless addict. He saw a human being, and that gave me a reason to live." Then she asked Malik what made him stop that day. He hesitated, then spoke slowly. "Because I remembered something my mother told me as a kid. You don't need a badge to be a good man. You just need courage and kindness. That day, I realized I had both, and I couldn't walk away." The segment aired across the country. People cried. Schools played it in classrooms. Police departments screened it during training. "Compassion over cuffs" became a phrase that echoed across the internet. But the real twist came 1 week later. A letter arrived at the police station. Handwritten, no return address, just a short message. "I watched the video of Malik and James. I was going to take my own life today, but now I'm not. I'm going to try instead. Thank you for showing me people still care." No one ever found out who wrote it, but it hit Malik like a freight train. He sat at his desk in the precinct's break room, tears rolling down his cheeks. He wasn't the emotional type, but this was different, because he hadn't just saved James. He had unknowingly saved someone else too. Weeks turned to months. James got promoted, first to full-time janitor, then to facilities coordinator. His carpentry skills revived the entire center. He built shelves, repaired old benches, even designed a children's reading nook. He had a paycheck, a tiny apartment, and most importantly, dignity. One evening, Malik dropped by the center to see how things were going. He found James sanding a table, humming an old tune. "Look at you," Malik said. "Working miracles." James looked up and smiled. "You're the miracle, man. I'm just building off it." Then, almost shyly, James reached into his pocket and handed Malik a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" Malik asked. "My first speaking invite," James said. "A youth group want me to talk about resilience." "Can you believe that?" Malik opened the paper and smiled. "I can." The night before his first public speaking event, James couldn't sleep. He lay on his mattress, eyes fixed on the ceiling, thinking back to the night it had all begun. The cold ground, the rain, the heavy footsteps of a man in uniform, the fear, the shame, and then compassion, the kind that shifts something inside you permanently. The next morning, James stood in front of 25 teens in a modest church basement. Some of them came from broken homes. Some had already seen the inside of jail cells. Some didn't trust anyone who claimed they understood. He walked to the mic, heart pounding. He paused, closed his eyes for a moment, then said, "My name is James, and the only reason I'm here alive today is because someone decided to see me, not judge me." The room went still. One by one, heads lifted. Guard dropped. Even the most closed-off kid in the back began to lean forward. James continued, "I'm not going to give you some fairy tale. I slept on sidewalks. I begged. I was angry. I gave up. But one man didn't. And that made all the difference. When the talk ended, one of the boys came up to him. "My dad's homeless," he said, eyes glossy. "I haven't talked to him in 2 years. But maybe I should." James nodded. It's never too late. A few months later, James and Malik were invited to a national law enforcement summit. Not to represent a city or a badge, but to represent what happens when humanity leads before authority. Malik stood at the podium, scanning the room full of chiefs, lieutenants, rookies, and academy trainers. "I didn't break protocol," he said, "but I bent something else that day, my perspective." He motioned toward James, sitting in the front row. "And because of that, I gained a brother." The crowd stood in ovation. Some cried. Some nodded with heavy conviction. Some walked out different than they walked in. Back in their hometown, life moved on, but it had changed. James was now a fixture at the community center. Kids called him Mr. J. Parents trusted him, and during cold winter nights, he made sure no man or woman was left outside. He started a small initiative called One Warm Meal, where volunteers made home-cooked food for the unhoused every Friday evening. What started as 5 people grew to 50. Malik often helped carry trays, sometimes in uniform, sometimes in a hoodie, blending in with the crowd. No cameras, no hashtags, just heartbeats. One night, after handing out the last bowl of soup, James sat on the sidewalk for a moment beside a young woman with tear-streaked cheeks. "You okay?" he asked. She shook her head. "I lost everything this week. My job, my apartment, and now I'm out here." James handed her a napkin, then quietly said, "I was here once too, right on this very sidewalk. I thought my story was over. Turns out, it was just beginning." She looked at him. "You really believe people like me can start over?" "I don't just believe it," James said. "I am it." Later that night, walking home under the streetlights, James found himself thinking again about the ripple effect, how one kind act can stretch across miles, hearts, even generations. And then his phone buzzed. A message from Maria. "Just got word. The school board wants you to speak next month. Topic, from broken to brave. You in?" James stared at the screen for a long time. Then he replied, "Always." Malik, too, was living a life forever shifted. He had once seen his badge as the only symbol of purpose. Now he saw every quiet act of kindness, every human connection, as the true badge of honor. He had taken up mentoring new recruits, and at the end of every training session, he told them, "You'll write 1,000 reports, make 100 arrests, but it's the one person you choose to help when no one's watching. That's the moment you'll remember forever." On the 1-year anniversary of the day they met, James and Malik returned to that same gas station. It had changed. A new owner, new sign, new colors. But the corner, that corner, still held echoes. They stood in silence. James broke it with a smile. "This is where it all started." Malik chuckled. "I almost cuffed you that night." They both stood for a long moment, then walked away, side by side, without looking back. Today, their story is told in classrooms, shelters, academies, churches, and living rooms. It's passed on not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Because every one of us has stood at a crossroad. And sometimes, all it takes is someone to see you, to pause, to ask a simple question. What happened to you? Instead of, what's wrong with you? So if you ever pass someone sleeping on a bench, or begging at a corner, or just looking lost in a world that barely blinks anymore, remember this. You might be their Malik. You might be their James. You might be the miracle they don't even know they're praying for. One moment, one act, one choice, it really can change everything.